Welcome to the celebration of life for former Dean Emeritus Marvin J. Malecha. While we had hoped to celebrate this in person, we appreciate you joining us from afar today. Today you will hear from many individuals who knew Marvin as a friend, a mentor, a colleague, a supervisor, a teacher, and a collaborator. I'll begin the celebration by describing Marvin's accomplishments at NC State, where he joined our college as dean in 1994 and retired from NC State in 2015. During this time, he was particularly sensitive to the needs of the college and most especially to the needs of students. And this interest extended to the classroom where Marvin taught design thinking to first-year students. He developed several new programs for the college, including a PhD in design in 2000, a Master of Art in Design in 2002, and an undergraduate major in design studies in 2010. I might add that the PhD in design is one of the larger programs in the United States today. He also launched new and innovative programs for students, including the Fish Market Gallery, the Student and Academic Services Office, the William Keating Bailey Information Technology Laboratory. He was able to reinvigorate the student publication through a supporting endowment in 2004 and opened the college's research office in 2013. He also reinvigorated connections to the college's alumni and the design professions, including restructuring the Design Foundation into two advisory groups, the Design Life Board and the Leaders Council. This reconnection laid the groundwork for the Capital Campaign, grew adjunct faculty positions, created new scholarships to benefit students, and developed mentoring programs. He and his wife, Cindy, developed the Marvin and Cindy Malecha Dream Scholarship Fund, which assists students in the NC State Design Camp to be exposed to design at a younger age. Looking outside the walls of the NC State campus, Marvin focused on global engagement. He established a branch campus in Prague in 2005, and beginning in 2012, all students in the college were required to participate in an international experience before graduation. Closer to home, the college helped incubate Raleigh's nonprofit Contemporary Art Museum from 2009 to 2014. Marvin is also well known for designing the Chancellor's Residence, known as the Point, as well as the University Mace, and the Chancellor's Ceremonial Lavalier. During the College of Design commencement ceremony, we recognized the Wings on Wings Award, another of Marvin's contributions to the college. The award recognizes individuals for their performance in the classroom and services to the college. He also developed the initial concept for the Design Life Award, formerly called the Design Guild Award, before it was redesigned by alumnus Matt McConnell and Craig McDuffie in 2018. While Marvin celebrated a long and fulfilling career at the College of Design, we can say and we can see that his contributions to this institution, to its students, and to its faculty remain long after he is gone. We are proud to honor him today. Now I would like to invite you to watch a video of Marvin put together by a former College of Design student from whom you will hear shortly, Alberto Rugao.
Well, this is an interesting position to be put in. I obviously have a passion for teaching design. I would call it, a core value of mine. In the middle of practice and all of the other things that I've done in my life, the joy of somehow teaching what I would call design inquiry. Design thinking is way overused, and so I call it design inquiry, is probably at the basis of why I believe in the teaching of design is a third domain of knowledge. And I realize that in the humanities and the sciences, this is a bit controversial, but for me, it's the way I see the world, that we absolutely depend upon scientific inquiry, scientific method, whatever you want to call it. It is a way of us discovering those underlying paths of the way the world works, and it's the foundation thoughts for a lot of the things we do. Humanistic inquiry teaches us of the interaction of cultures and the values of different cultures and how those cultures take on the interpretation of those scientific realities. In between those two is a body of knowledge that doesn't exist in the same way as the social scientist or the scientist find information, because essentially it doesn't exist until the designer interacts with it. You know, the famous example, of course, is the Mona Lisa. And we desperately need the Mona Lisa now. We love the Mona Lisa. We love what it means to us. You know, the representation of Da Vinci. But until Da Vinci painted it, nobody knew that we needed it. And for me, this has been a journey, which poses an interesting question. It's one of my favorite metaphysical questions. Theseus, one of the great heroes of Greece, leaves on his Odyssey in a boat. During the course of his travels, he replaces every single board, sail, sheet, the guiding ropes. Everything on that boat gets completely replaced. And he returns to harbor. Does he return with the same ship? Is it the same ship he left with? It might be identical, but is it the same ship? Through the course of my career, I find that I've been replacing every plank on the ship. Now, every experience comes to me and adds to me and changes me. And so over the course of 40 years of teaching at a higher education level and doing practice and writing, every board, every plank, every sail has been replaced. But am I the same sailing ship? Who am I now? And it's a question that, again, needs to be asked as a teacher. If you're not asking that of yourself, then you're not being honest with yourself.
We'll now hear from Marshall Parnell.
Thank you, Mark, and for affording me this opportunity to speak. It's difficult for me to do this, but I want to convey that Marvin was a friend of mine on many levels. I first met Marvin when he came to the AIA board in about 2004, I guess. I was in my first year, and I was in my second year when he showed up. And it was, I used to sit in the back of the room with Hal Munger, and we'd sit there and we'd sort of try and call out those three different types of board members: the ones that came just to enjoy the perks, those that came to campaign, to run for office, and those that came to change the organization and make it better. And that was Marvin. He had a way of sort of summing up the discussion and bringing us back to the main issue and keeping us on track and on focus. As we became close, I remember that he and I would spend most of our time talking about family. He told me about his father, who he greatly admired, and as an honest, working, hardworking man. He owned a Marathon gas station in Minnesota. I can remember how he beamed when Chloe was born. He told me about, how he couldn't wait to go out and see Peter and Chloe and out on the West Coast. And we talked about Michelle, when she went to Chicago, when she got promoted, when she got her license. I think I know her whole story, and I'm thankful for that. He didn't have to tell me much about Cindy because Cindy was usually at his side when I saw him. And I had a good opportunity to talk with Cindy recently, yesterday, as a matter of fact. And you have to take these things one day at a time. Let me tell you just another quick story about Marvin and myself. In the fall of 2008, when the U.S. economy crashed, Marvin was just a few months away from taking over the presidency of AIA. I was the president at the time, and we had a big task to sort of cut the AIA budget, knowing that the economy was crashing. So Marvin, myself, and the executive vice president sat down, and we had to trim an $80 million budget down to $62 million. And after we did that, we knew there were going to be a lot of feelings hurt and people that needed to be explain what happened. So Marvin told me, he said, I'm going to call all the committee members and I'm going to call the components. And I said, well, you take half and I'll take half. And he said, no, you're not going to be in office in a couple of months, and I think they need to hear from me. And he took it upon himself to call everybody. Marvin was a leader, and he didn't shirk his responsibilities as a leader. On this particular campus here at NC State, there are pennants and flags around that say, think and do. Every time I see one of those, I think about Marvin. Because Marvin had a saying of his own. He said, if everyone was thinking the same thing, then nobody was really thinking. I know others of you know Marvin in other lights, in other families that he was a part of. He was a leader just about wherever he went, whether it's on a college campus or ACSA or AIA, or he won the Topaz Medal. He had a beautiful mind. I will miss my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Tanya Allen, and I'm an associate professor in art and design, and had the great pleasure and opportunity to teach with Marvin in design thinking and before design inquiry. And before I get started, I'd just like to say on a personal level how much I will miss and valued so much his mentorship of me and his leadership of the college. He really was made such an impact on so many people that he touched. And as faculty, we're still benefiting from his legacy every day. I'll reiterate some of what Mark noted in his opening remarks for what it meant to us as faculty in the College of Design. Through Marvin's establishment of the Prague Institute, he gave faculty and students an opportunity to explore the world. His support of the PhD program and the Doctor of Design underscored his unwavering commitment to research and scholarship in design theory and practice for students and faculty. His vision and support for the Contemporary Art Museum in Raleigh's Warehouse District gave faculty and students an opportunity to actively participate in building Raleigh's art and design community. And his reignition of the student publication put students back at the center of its development, and the endowment that he developed made certain that it would be in existence far into the future. Marvin was also dean during the transition to the first year experience, which gave students a cross-disciplinary introduction to design theory through design inquiry. Marvin himself taught this design inquiry class, as Mark and others mentioned, for his entire career at NC State, and was passionate about it as a perspective, but mostly and also as a way of life. As I mentioned, I first met him as a teaching assistant while I was in graduate school, and then I went on to co-teach with him for five or 6 years. Freshmen took this class, and it was obviously a special experience for so many of them. To be taught by the dean of the college was a signal that they were valued, and it welcomed them into the college and into design in a really profound way. I remember Marvin, in one of our many conversations, saying to me that many of the students were out of their towns and away from their families for the first time. And to him, that meant that they were in the midst of a transformative experience that his class was one small part of. His empathy for students who were in some ways so far from where he currently was, and his acknowledgement of their life experiences was one of his greatest gifts, and something that as a teacher, I continually think about and always aspire to. He would often say to students that they had walked through a door that they could not walk back out of. He inspired and challenged them to make the most out of the unique perspective that being in design gave them. And that's what he meant by that. Shortly before Marvin passed away, Alberto Rugao and I created a social media call where we asked former students, colleagues, and alums to share memories and images of Marvin. The response was overwhelming. The vividness and richness of the memories proved the lasting impact that Marvin had on our college. So in closing, I'd like to read one of them that was written by Jennifer Peeler, who was an architecture student and a former TA for design thinking. She wrote, and I quote, "I am so grateful for all that you have taught and demonstrated. I went to architecture school with the intention and goal of changing how I think, of learning to think like an architect. But it wasn't until our conversations that I learned what that truly meant. Your wisdom, your mentorship, and your mind-opening lectures were a defining part of my journey through school and since," end quote. Personally and professionally, I've gained so much from having spent the time that I was able to learning and growing as a result of Marvin's leadership and vision. He pushed me in ways that I didn't think that I was capable of sort of performing in. And he always did it with a kind and a gentle and a supportive hand. His legacy will forever be felt in the college, at NC State, and throughout design. We'll miss him so much. Thank you. Oh, and I forgot I'm supposed to introduce Alberto. And next we'll have Alberto Rugao, who is also a former teaching assistant for Marvin and a colleague and friend.
Okay, hello everyone. I need to set this up quickly. So I met Marvin with the opportunity to TA for him in design thinking. And I had an opportunity to TA for him for 4 years. And right after he became a friend for life and a counselor, he counseled me on business and owning a studio and all that went with him. Earlier today, we heard Mark mention the Wings on Wings Award, which is an award that Marvin used to give out in graduation, in the graduation ceremony. And I would like to share with you what that award meant with people. The recipients of the award received a very elongated sheet of paper that had a reproduction of this religious composition, the Archangel Michael, by Natalia Gocharova. And with it, there was this explanation where basically, you know, the Archangel Michael is on Pegasus, which we all know that was really important for Marvin. And, you know, it represents the opportunities for all of us who have design as a career, as a passion, as a talent, but also the responsibility that we have along with being designers and the impact that our work can have, which is one of the bigger learnings that Marvin always gave us. But the important thing is that the award hindered on or focused on this idea of nobility of the individual, which sounds a bit strange these days, but Marvin was really into the values of the person and the human being. I'll never forget how he taught his first year students the importance of the signature, as the idea that if somebody signs a piece of paper by hand, there is a contract, there is a relationship between the person and the intent of what's going on. But then, that award was offered to individuals who demonstrated the willingness to make significant contributions to the College of Design and the community. And I really don't have the data, and I don't know how many of these Marvin gave out, but a few years back, when Marvin was recognized in the gala, was the first time that I flew back to NC State, and I realized how many Wings on Wings award recipients were, because all of them got to wear the pin during the ceremony. So today, I want to do something different, and I want to leave all of us with a little bit of a ceremony that I really don't have a right to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I want to award Marvin with his own Wings on Wings recognition. And Marvin not only impacted all of us as a community, he taught a lot of us how to look, how to observe, and hopefully discover, which of course he always quoted from Le Corbusier. And as a friend, as a student, and as a former TA, I'm going to miss you dearly, and I think that the community will do too. Next, we're going to hear from Catherine Peely. She chose to share her remarks in a digital pre-recorded format. Catherine is the current College of Design Leaders Council President and the Chief Practice Officer and Principal at LS3P Art Associates. Let me sign out here of the share.
Thank you, Alberta, and good evening, everyone. I met Marvin shortly after he arrived at NC State. And what struck me at the time was how keenly curious he was and how much he wanted to learn about our own firm's professional practice, as well as understand from all of the various companies and firms in the areas, the ones that hired his students, what he could do to help prepare them for their future careers. And it made a deep impression on me because he didn't have a preconceived vision of what the school and ultimately the College of Design could and should be. He was open to new ideas, and he took the time to really listen to the design community before he enacted change. His mark on the College of Design is still felt today as he set a high bar of excellence, and he rallied our design community to get more involved with the college. I had the honor of working on numerous projects with Marvin over the years, including several project case studies, one of which we presented together at Cranbrook Institute. The human stories behind our projects, the good and the bad, and what lessons we could take from each one was vitally important to Marvin in his quest to improve the profession of architecture and other design disciplines. So I know that all of us have our own stories about how Marvin really impacted our own life, which is why we're honoring him today. And I tried to think of a different way to capture his impact on all of us. So I'm going to go way outside of my comfort zone today. Some of you know that my first love was music before I found architecture as a profession. So in honor of Marvin, I thought I would perform a few bars of one of my favorite songs that seems so appropriate today. It's from the Broadway musical Wicked, and it's called For Good. I've heard it said that people come into our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we are led to those who help us most to grow if we let them, and we help them in return. Now I don't know if I believe that's always true, but I know I'm who I am today because I knew you. Like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes the sun, like a stream that meets a boulder halfway through the wood. Who can say if we've been changed for the better? Because we knew you changed for good. Marvin, thank you for the impact you made on all of us, and rest well. So now I'd like to introduce the fabulous Gab Smith. Gab is Executive Director of the Contemporary Art Museum in Raleigh. Gab?
Thank you, Catherine. That was so beautiful. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Gab Smith, and I was the Executive Director of the Contemporary Art Museum in Raleigh from 2013 to 2020. And Marvin was a part of a bold group of visionary leaders who believed a museum for art and design in Raleigh's downtown core was essential. Marvin's advocacy and his support through the College of Design helped create CAM, a free, non-collecting contemporary art museum that provides an environment for transformation through cultural experiences, educational programs, and bold, non-traditional exhibitions by living artists. Many of you know CAM, a beautiful, award-winning, and iconic building. CAM celebrates 10 years in the Warehouse District next year. It was Marvin's fierce advocacy, foundational financial support, and deep wisdom that helped CAM become this environment for transformation. When you experience CAM, know that who CAM is and what CAM means to the community is due in part to Marvin's vision and leadership. Thanks to Marianne Howard, Cindy Malecha, and CAM's board of directors, there's a drawing by Marvin hanging at CAM now. It hangs on a wall between the main gallery and the classroom, and it was symbolically installed in this spot to honor the connection that Marvin understood to be vital between design and education, museums and schools, and artists and communities. Marvin helped create a legacy of connection to artists that were exhibiting at CAM who were also educators and practitioners at the College of Design, including Precious Lavelle, Justin LeBlanc, and the Experience Design Lab. As important, Marvin's legacy instilled the belief that creating a space for the community to engage directly with artists and designers while experiencing their work shapes how we all think and connect with each other. For young people, programs like Design Camp, Camp to Go, or the middle school docent program strengthen essential skills like creativity, critical thinking, and collaboration. All of these skills build confidence. Marvin believed that if you're confident in your ideas, then you have the agency to create. I'm going to repeat that because I think that's so important to who Marvin is and what he meant to CAM. Marvin believed that if you are confident in your ideas, then you have the agency to create. This is who CAM is and what CAM does, and this is in part because of Marvin. Even the sketchbooks that CAM's middle school docents use to record their observations and ideas are a direct tribute to Marvin. His skyline to sketchbook belief in the power of drawing to change the world has helped all of us become better communicators. Marvin was a mentor, a teacher, a friend, and a champion of CAM. Marvin often had a twinkle in his eye, and I think what CAM means to the community was sometimes one of the reasons for that twinkle. CAM honors him by celebrating the belief that everyone has the power, the right, and the ability to create, to be a creative, and to be transformed by creativity. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share what Marvin means to CAM and the CAM community. And next, I'd like to welcome David Crawford, Executive Vice President of the AIA North Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gab. Appreciate it. I'm Dave Crawford. I'm the Executive Vice President of AIA North Carolina. There are really so many stories through the 32 years that I knew Marvin, but really with my limited time here, there are kind of two in particular that have meant a lot to me and I think are worth sharing. If I had to wrap them both up in a theme, I'd say they encompass a window into Marvin's inherent understanding of place. The first one I kind of want to entitle Why Jesse? So my first introduction to Marvin was in 1988, where I began my career with AIA at the California Council. Marvin was the dean at Cal Poly Pomona, so our paths crossed a number of times, and we even did some work together in the area of practice management through AIACC. I continued my path in the AIA when I took over the exec job in San Diego in '91, still coming into contact with Marvin through AIA events and committee work. So fast forward 10 years to February 2001 when I landed here in North Carolina. And who was the very first person to call me? Of course, it was Marvin. He invited me over to the college to get reacquainted. And as he put it, quote, teach the California kid how to survive in the South. Of course, he and Cindy had a few years head start on me in their assimilation skills. So after about an hour of learning about, bless your heart and sweet tea, he asked if I had any questions. And I said, yeah, just one. Why Jesse? He said, what do you mean? I said, why Jesse Helms? I said, how can a state that proclaims to be the New South and elects somebody like, at that time, John Edwards, okay, I know we didn't know at that time, still continue to elect somebody like Jesse Helms? So most of you know that my vocation is really politics and government, so I'm quite familiar with the term all politics are local. But until Marvin spent the next half hour explaining to me the legend of Jesse Helms, I truly never really understood what it meant in practice. And he admitted to having the same thoughts when he landed in North Carolina as well. But here's what he learned over the ensuing 6 years. He said Jesse Helms had the best ever constituent services of all congressional offices. He made it his business to get to know everyone, and he made the business of governing personal. Marvin said that almost everyone he came in contact with in the state had a personal story of how Jesse had helped them or their family. So basically what Marvin told me is just as architecture is about place, he came to understand so is politics. Bring it local and make it personal. That first conversation I had with Marvin here has been invaluable to my daily dealings in the North Carolina political arena, and it's something I will never forget. And the second story I want to convey, I think I'm going to give it the title, Eliminate the Gatekeeper. Now, most people aren't aware of this story, but I think at this moment in time, it's important for others to know about. So back in 2003, Phil Freelon was elevated to the AIA College of Fellows. At that time, I was not involved with the AIA North Carolina Fellows Committee process, but I was thrilled that Phil had been elevated and assumed that the nomination came through our chapter. Marvin was asked to join the Fellows Committee beginning in 2004. It's a 5-year commitment that culminates in ascension to the chair. A number of months following the investiture of the 2003 class, I received a call from Phil asking if Marvin and I could come to his office to discuss fellow matters. Of course, we happily took the meeting and we went to RTP. Now, the reason for the meeting was soon apparent. Phil wanted to share with us some, I'm going to use air quotes, flaws in the chapter's fellow nominating process. These flaws were soon discovered with his own application for advancement. Marvin and I were horrified to learn that, in fact, the chapter's Fellows Committee had not nominated Phil. In fact, they refused to accept Phil as a chapter nominee. Ultimately, Phil had to seek out 5 fellows across the country to secure his nomination. We were both just stunned and horrified by this. Phil explained to us both that there was no bitterness, no animosity. He just felt that as leaders in the chapter, we needed to understand what was going on within the committee. And at this point, you can just imagine the discussion between Marvin and I. I won't get into the weeds, but I'll cut to the solution that Marvin finally came to. Giving the 5 members of the 2002 Fellows Committee the benefit of the doubt that in the early 2000s, most of them who were not from the Triangle weren't familiar with Phil's work or firm. Marvin believed once again that the closest to the work and the architect might be better positioned to recommend fellowship nominations. Unfortunately, that's not how the AIA Fellows Committee was composed at the time. In fact, it looked more like a gatekeepers committee, more than anything, mostly and pardon me for saying this, 5 old white dudes that had control of the decisions regarding fellowship in our chapter. So Marvin proposed to let those closest to our members bring forward nominations to the committee. Now, the AIA will tell you there are 3 ways to be nominated for fellowship, but Marvin made that 4 here in North Carolina. He created a new rule that allowed all of our local sections a path for their most esteemed members to automatically become a chapter nominee. He basically eliminated the gatekeeper mentality by truly understanding that local members have a better sense of who our fellows are in North Carolina. Oh, and by the way, he also made sure that Phil was appointed to the committee in 2005. For Cindy, Peter, Michelle, and Chloe, as I did back in May, I send along my deepest condolences for your loss. But more importantly today, as this is a celebration of Marvin's life, I want to leave you with this. Marvin touched countless lives during his career, probably more than most. I wanted you to know the special meaning he had for me and how he helped shape my life. I like to think that that he continues to shape new generations through me and the many others as we pass along the lessons he imparted with all of us. So I have one more job here today, and that's to introduce the lineup of our next speakers. They're all part of the pre-recorded portion of this afternoon, and each has a special relationship with Marvin. And they're all some of Marvin's closest and dearest friends and family. So let me go in order. First will be Peter Kuttner, FAIA, who both Marvin and I became friends with during our tenures on the AIA National Board of Directors in the mid to late 2000s. Next, we'll have Marianne Howard, Steve Schuster's wife. Marianne and Steve's relationship began early with Marvin after he assumed the role of dean at NC State. Then we'll have Walt Teague, FAIA, a dear friend and confidant of Marvin's, an NC State alum, and one of AIA North Carolina's most esteemed members. And finally, of course, we'll hear from our dear friend, Cindy Malecha. Christine, I think we can roll into Peter's video now. Thank you all.
Thank you, Cindy, for letting me share with everyone today my sense of Marvin and the amazing man he was. As architects, we like to flatter ourselves with the multidimensional nature of our chosen field, how we use equally both the right and left hemisphere of our brains, how we have the capacity to address aesthetic as well as social issues, how we take seriously the duty to teach and mentor our young professionals, and how we take on leadership roles with enthusiasm and skill. And yet, seldom do we find someone who embraces all of those principles and has found a way to fully integrate them into his life's work. I'm here to say that Marvin Malecha was one of those superb individuals. He did it all with grace, integrity, and humor. I first met Marvin in 2006 through the American Institute of Architects when we were both on the board, and he generously reached out to me and connected. I was to learn that reaching out to listen and help was how Marvin lived. As usually the case with Marvin, he rose to yet another leadership position, and soon we all celebrated his inauguration as president of the AIA in 2009. Mine was the 2009 class, the Niners, crowning our terms that same year Marvin was president, and he was our president, always welcoming. Marvin reached out to everyone. Here, Marvin and Cindy once again joined our class of Niners, this time at the Monday Club in Harvard Square. Marvin even donned our regalia, here wearing our Niner Nation neckerchief. And of course, we reciprocated, wearing Marvin's distinctive Corbu glasses en masse. Marvin was a serious and passionate leader and also knew how to have fun. Before he was our president, we also knew him as the Chancellor of the College of Blowers, a humorous title bestowed upon one member of the AIA board for the purpose of keeping our board meeting of 52 members moving forward, ringing his bell to keep us in line. Marvin brought many facets to everyone he worked with. Marvin was relentlessly strategic. He always seemed to have a plan for moving forward and always excited about the next step. Marvin magically kept all his friendships alive and close. We got together in Boston once when he was celebrating with his lifelong Minnesota and Roach traveling scholarship cohort. The Boston Society of Architects was honoring one friend, and he instantly flew up from North Carolina. And of course, Marvin could draw. He sketched constantly, capturing both new ideas and the world around him. As I got to know Marvin, it seemed only logical that I begin to draw him. One thing we learned about Marvin is that he was a true academic, and boy, could he talk. His metaphors were sometimes obscure, and my first sketch of him was Marvin meets his metaphor, but we always listened to what he had to say. I appreciated his observation and sketched one of his quotes from his inauguration. Quote, "If you see a turtle on a fence post, someone put it there." It was typical of Marvin's humility and his sense of teamwork, a true collaborator. When Marvin went into the hospital and the virus made Cindy his permanent roommate, it seemed that some posts might help promote his rapid recovery. We spoke on the phone when possible, but the sketches were meant to keep him in good spirits. My intent was to document the little things he'd tell me, and Cindy has asked me to share a few of them at this time. Things like the support he felt from all the doctors and nurses, or how important it was when his family assembled outside his window to wish him well. Although the whole process was frightening, the hospital did become a home to Marvin and Cindy. And through the stress and pain, everyone worked to make Marvin just a little more comfortable. There were highlights, Marvin reported, like when they managed to smuggle Donnelly into the hospital. And of course, Zoom was able to bring friends and family a bit closer to Marvin and Cindy, expanding just a little the limits of their tiny, tiny room. One highlight was last Easter Sunday, when the medical staff conspired to get them out onto the roof for a bit of fresh air. When Marvin finally did make the trip to surgery that second time, the parade they gave him was a relief to us all. Unfortunately, it was not to be. Marvin left us with a heartfelt sadness, but we can see him where he imagined himself one day painting in the Tuscan sun. I want to finish with a quote from Marvin's booklet, To Profess. Looking at life is not done from a distance. It is realized in the joyful present. Marvin lived his life that way, and we will all miss him.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mark, for inviting me to share about my friendship with Cindy and Marvin. I'm especially honored since Marvin had many friends from all over the world. I became friends with Marvin through my husband, Steve. He had a long professional and personal relationship with Marvin. And of course, through Marvin, we met Cindy. Our friendship grew over the years, and we enjoyed so many fun times with them. When Steve and I decided to set up a scholarship at the College of Design, we sought counsel from Marvin. Marvin helped us think through how to structure a scholarship that would have a meaningful impact on a student's life while maintaining the high scholastic integrity of the College of Design. We never felt pressure from Marvin, just support. This was typical of Marvin. He had a warm way of connecting with people. We also had the good fortune to travel with Marvin, Cindy, and 12 mutual friends. Our first trip in 2015 was to Prague. Marvin and Cindy planned the trip, and everything about it was exceptional. The accommodations, the food, the art, and the history. With 16 people, you might imagine there would be occasional tense moments. There weren't any. Marvin led the way, and our entire trip was enjoyable, interesting, and relaxing. Dinners were fabulous that always ended with Bekarovka, which I'm sure many of you have shared with Marvin. Now, personally, I think it requires a bit of cultivation. Our second trip to Tuscany was early fall of 2018. It was very special because though we didn't know at the time this was to be our last trip together. There were 10 of us, including many of the same friends who had traveled to Prague. The planning and preparation that Cindy and Marvin did was extraordinary. Once again, a fascinating, interesting, and fun trip. Marvin again led the way with his easygoing manner. In closing, last year, I was in California for the holidays with Steve's family. I also spent a few days with Marvin and Cindy in San Diego. One evening, Marvin, Cindy, and I were sitting at their dining room table, reminiscing about our Christmas memories. Naturally, the conversation turns to music. You might think that one of Marvin's favorites would be a famous opera, maybe a piece of classical music, but surprisingly, Marvin's favorite Christmas song was, and I can hear him singing it now, by the Beach Boys, Little Saint Nick. You probably know the song. I can hear the glee in his voice and see the sparkle in his eyes as we sat around the table singing Little Saint Nick. It was a treat. So during this holiday season, why not search for the Beach Boys and raise a glass to Marvin and put a smile on your face. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Walt Teague. I'm an alumnus of North Carolina State University College of Design and School of Architecture. Marvin had a saying, always remember the main thing is the main thing. In his life, his main thing was not to achieve greatness for himself. It was to help others achieve greatness in themselves. This kind of open, giving spirit offered to others defines a great person. This too defines Marvin. This was his calling for life. Throughout the weeks of waiting for his heart transplant, we had regular telephone conversations. Today, I want to share with you about our last conversation. This last conversation was very emotional for us both. Of course, at the time, we did not know it would be the last. He spoke of his love and appreciation for the hope, support, and prayers he had received from so many others, which includes many of you present today. As we conversed, Marvin began talking about his life and career. Unexpectedly, it seemed as if he was delivering what I can now say was his own eulogy. Marvin began talking of his humble beginnings. He grew up in Minnesota with his hardworking father running an auto service station in their small Midwestern town. His grandparents were immigrants of what is now the Czech Republic. This Czech ancestry is the source of his proud, hard-working ethnic heritage. The conversation fast-forwarded to his inspiration to study architecture. During high school, he was introduced to the work of architect and educator Ralph Rabson, who he admired and was fortunate to study with during his undergraduate work at the University of Minnesota. He excelled and continued by pursuing his Master of Architecture degree at Harvard University. Upon graduation, he began working with the office of Hugh Stubbins and Associates, becoming one of their lead designers. He continued to tell how his career as a young architect was transitioned by the realization of a companion passion and calling to teach and mentor architecture students. He began that endeavor at the California Polytechnical University, Pomona. At just 32, he became dean after being challenged as too young and inexperienced as an administrator for such a position to be an effective dean. Marvin proved them wrong, and in the 14 years from 1982 until 1994, he led the College of Environmental Design to academic ascension and financial growth into a stronger design program. In 1994, he was named Dean of the College of Design here with us at North Carolina State University. He was attracted primarily because the college showed promise of even more greatness by its reputation. For 21 years, he led the College of Design to even greater excellence. Others here today have expanded on these achievements. He spoke of how unprecedented it was for a dean to survive such a long tenure. During this time, a special achievement he cherished was strengthening relations of the College of Design with all alumni, design practitioners, and especially with the architectural community. This high level of involvement led to his election by his architect peers to serve as the national president of the American Institute of Architects. His leadership and administrative experience, along with his superb people skills, was responsible for our profession navigating one of the industry's most challenging times of the Great Recession. In addition, he was honored with the highest award bestowed upon a North Carolina architect, the F. Carter Williams AIA North Carolina Gold Medal. Upon retirement from North Carolina State University, he did not really retire. He seized an opportunity to move to San Diego near family and assumed the position as president of New School of Architecture and Design. Once again, as their president, he led the school through a relatively short 5 years of rebuilding academically and financially. And then it happened. Marvin needed a heart transplant. Marvin faced this as just another temporary obstacle to overcome. Even during his long 5-month hospitalized wait for a heart, his optimism prevailed. Through it all, he was making plans for more living. His positive spirit and courage was always to energetically head straight at whatever the challenge, to not just overcome, but to excel. He inspired so many with that contagious aspirational nature, even for those attending to him during his hospital stay. This continuum of life told in one conversation magnified how extraordinary Marvin's life and career had been, and the immense positive impact he made on everyone and everywhere he associated. It revealed that from the beginning, Marvin kept the main thing the main thing. He had remained true to his calling for life. At every place and time of his life, he repeatedly assumed a role to take on extremely difficult challenges and improve, stabilize, enrich, design, renew, and invigorate, and achieve. In this last conversation, this legacy, which is Marvin Malecha, was obvious. At the end of this conversation, he shared that, quote, "Next, I'm going to recover and do watercolors and Tai Chi in Tuscany," end of quote. A well-deserved prize for a truly, fully realized life, I think we can all see of Marvin. His friendships and bonds were formed not only in words expressed in conversations, but simply by being with him. One always came away feeling that they were made better, thinking clear, and inspired by that time with him. In reflecting on visits with Marvin and the photos shared today, one sees a genuine person whose soul is exposed by the expressions on his face, his smile, the gleam in his eyes, and his keen focus on his family, friends, colleagues, and students. All of this defines how he touched others and has left his everlasting mark at the places he served and in all of our hearts. Marvin always began events with a toast. Here's to good design. This story ends as he always began. Here's to good design and a life fully lived. Here's to Marvin J. Malecha. You are all invited to remember Marvin Malecha by giving to the North Carolina State University College of Design Marvin and Cindy Malecha Dream Scholarship Fund. This need-based scholarship is to assist those who might not otherwise be able to afford the design camp experience. It is also intended to provide financial assistance to need-based first-year College of Design students. Gifts may be made to the North Carolina State University Foundation College of Design Marvin and Cindy Malecha Dream Scholarship Fund at the link provided in your registration to this remembrance. On behalf of the family of Marvin Malecha and the College of Design, thank you for your gift. Cindy, Peter, Michelle, and Chloe, we all extend our sympathy and our love. Marvin is remembered as a great one that positively impacted us all.
With his distinctive black corbeau glasses, black Italian suits, black shirt and tie, and maybe, just maybe, a red or yellow tie for a special occasion, and those amazing shoes, Marvin lived a life in design. As AIA president, Marvin said, "We all know this. A life in design is a combination of determination, dedication, and desire. But it is through our passion and dedication to the profession that we can, in the words of the Roman philosopher Cato, deserve to succeed. There is never a guarantee of success, just the promise of it, a promise that will only be fulfilled by commitment." When Marvin became dean at NC State, then School of Design, a university board of trustee placed a child's toy, a simple plastic kaleidoscope, in his hand with the admonition, "It doesn't take a lot of money to see the world differently." The lesson of the kaleidoscope is that we must be prepared to see the world differently. We cannot see this challenge with the same old eyes. Design thought is our most important asset in this endeavor. The words of Marvin's mother also rang in his ears. If everyone is thinking alike, no one is thinking at all. He considered his life a calling, a devotion. With a pencil, sketchbook, notebook, or napkin in hand, Marvin wrote the following when awarded the Topaz Medallion. "In the reflective light, I see the power of our discipline, recognizing that our urge to make and do is challenged by what we have done for others. For in the work of our hands, we find the truth about ourselves. Through drawing, I have learned that knowing how to see transcends skills, because deeply embedded memories and sensations make every stroke an expression of the heart." I recall the year that Marvin's design thinking class painted the free expression tunnel with a series of his face like an Andy Warhol painting. The words at the entrance read, "The students are the reason that I'm here." That simple phrase sums up Marvin's love for the students, an expression of his heart. We all remember Marvin as a brilliant conversationalist who was passionate and optimistic, with an infectious laugh, who consoled and cared. He was an impassionate educator and lover of life, as well as a devoted friend and teacher. He moved people with his stories and experiences. He was one of those rare individuals that inspired you to see the world differently and believe in something. His devotion may have been his greatest asset. He was a devoted friend, colleague, a mentor, a loving brother, uncle, husband, father, and Grandpa Lion. He was a devoted father to Peter, his very creative son, to Michelle, his little architect daughter, to Chloe, his granddaughter, and to our life together, beginning as high school sweethearts, and our love story of over 50 years of experiences together. He cherished his relationships with friends and colleagues from around the world in our NC State family. We both cherished our times together. We cherished our travels to the Czech Republic and Italy. And now we all come together to celebrate Marvin. Marvin's legacy at NC State began and will remain with his words, engraved in a brick wall at the College of Design, engraved in the Design Gala Award designed by Marvin, and engraved on the urn designed by Peter and Michelle. All design begins with the dance of life. Marvin wrote these words in his notebook entitled, "Who knows? Who knows?" Life is never straightforward. It is just that what is next may be completely unexpected. It is a joy. It is a tear. It makes us more creative and more alive, and it ends us entirely. We must do and be with that which brings us love and allows us to love. The legacy of Marvin J. Malecha is now entrusted to all of us. Marvin loved these words. There was, and there was, and there was, but in there was, there is, and there shall be the light and the light and the light. And in the light, God. Godspeed. Fly with Pegasus, Marvin.
And so I'd like to thank those of you who were close to Marvin for your gracious remarks today. Cindy, our hearts go out to your family. For those of you watching from home, we would have loved to have been together in person to honor Marvin. I'd like to invite each of you to share any comments or memories you have on Marvin's page on dignitymemorial.com. If you would like to donate to the Marvin and Cindy Malecha Dream Scholarship Fund, you may do so using the link provided in the comments. What a moving day this has been. Once again, we'll end by saying, here's to great design.